Ready to see the future through the lens of the past? Welcome to Endtime Prophecy Stories. Here we dive deep into ancient mysteries and uncover what lies ahead in a world filled with uncertainty. But we can't do it without you. If you want to stay prepared and never miss a revelation, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. And if you find value in these stories, give this video a like. It helps us reach more truth seekers just like you. Now let's open the seal on today's story. Scientism 2, The Great Delusion, Part 1, The Architect and the Exile. Prologue, The Keeper of Keys. Mount Weather Emergency Operations Center, Sub-Level 9. Elias Jenks pushed the heavy mop bucket across the linoleum floor, the squeak of the wheels echoing in the sterile corridor. To the men in the white lab coats passing him, he was invisible. He was just Jenks, the old man with the limp and the gray coveralls who cleaned up coffee spills and emptied the shredders. That was the point. In a world of surveillance, the only way to hide was to become beneath notice. Jenks paused outside door 404. The biometric scanner hummed. A young technician, barely 30, swiped his badge. As the door slid open, Jenks caught a glimpse of the fishbowl, the massive spherical projection room suspended in the center of the mountain. Inside, the air was shimmering. A three-dimensional hologram of a metallic disc, 500 feet wide, was hovering over a simulation of New York City. It looked terrifyingly real. It cast shadows. It displaced light. Refresh rate is holding at 120 hertz, the technician said to someone inside. Audio modulation is synced. The Voice of God protocol is ready for deployment. Jenks looked down at his mop water. It was gray and swirling, much like his conscience. 30 years ago, he hadn't been pushing a mop. 30 years ago, he had been Dr. Elias Jenks, lead optical physicist for Project Dominion. He had written the code that calculated the refractive index of the firmament. He had helped them map the glass so they could turn it into a screen. He had thought they were building a defense shield. He hadn't realized they were building a theater. He resumed mopping, his knuckles white on the handle. They were moving the timeline up. The alien narrative, the great deception to unite the world against a fake external threat, was no longer a contingency plan. It was the active script. Jenks knew he had to reach the kid. Parker, the physicist who had stumbled onto the truth. Parker had the passion, but he lacked the blueprint. He was trying to pick a lock without a key. Jenks checked his watch, an old analog Casio. His shift ended in 10 minutes. He had a burner phone buried in a coffee can in the woods 3 miles from the employee exit. It was time to make a call. Chapter 1. The Silent Frequency. Appalachian Mountains, West Virginia, 6 months later. The silence of the woods was heavy, broken only by the hum of the generator and the frantic clicking of Mike Parker's keyboard. The cabin was essentially a glorified shed. Insulation peeled from the walls, and the windows were covered with heavy blackout curtains. It smelled of pine needles, ozone, and desperation. "Mike, you need to eat." Wendy placed a bowl of vegetable stew on the desk, pushing aside a stack of hard drives. She looked thinner than she had in DC, her face drawn, but her eyes held a calm fire that Mike envied. While he consumed data, she consumed scripture. "I can't eat, Wendy. Look at this." Mike pointed to the screen. It was the analytics page for their website, The Enclosed World. "0, Mike said, his voice cracking. 0 views in 48 hours. I posted the proof of the laser gyroscope detecting 0 drift. I posted the Nikon P1000 footage of the boat that should be behind 200 feet of curvature. Nothing. It's like we're shouting into a vacuum." "We aren't in a vacuum, Mike. That's the globe lie," Wendy said gently. "We are in a spiritual war. The algorithm is just a digital principality." Mike rubbed his face. His beard was overgrown, scratches healing on his cheek from chopping wood. It's not just the algorithm, it's the apathy. People want the ball. They want the insignificance. If they live on a ball, they are an accident of evolution. If they live here, he gestured around the room, in a stationary enclosed system, then they have to answer to the builder, and they hate him. A sudden ping from the laptop made them both jump. Mike froze. He had set the laptop to reject all incoming connections except for one encrypted channel he used to monitor seismic activity. But this wasn't seismic data. It was a chat window. Unknown user. The glass is getting thin, Dr. Parker. Mike stared at the text. Who is that? Mike, who is this? How did you bypass my firewall? Unknown user. I built the firewall you're using, or at least the architecture it runs on. You're looking for the curve in the water, Mike, but you need to be looking at the sky. They are going to break it. Mike, break what? Unknown user. The Firmament, October 31st. Project Bluebeam isn't just a light show, it's a breach. They are inviting the neighbors in. Mike's heart hammered against his ribs. Wendy, look at this syntax. Neighbors. He means the entities. Mike, I don't know who you are. I'm offline. Unknown user. Don't go offline. Go to Seattle. The Zenith Collective. They have the telemetry you need. But do not sign their contract, and do not drink their water. I will find you there. The connection severed. The chat window vanished. Set Seattle? Wendy asked, reading over his shoulder. That's the headquarters of that new tech group, the ones claiming to be flat Earth revolutionaries. The Zenith Collective, Mike nodded. I thought they were just a honeypot, controlled opposition. They probably are, Wendy said. But whoever that was, he sounded scared, Mike. He sounded like he knew the timeline, Mike corrected. He stood up, grabbing his jacket. If they are planning something for October 31st, we have 4 weeks. We can't stay in the woods. Chapter 2. The Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. Seattle, Washington, 3 days later. The Zenith Collective didn't look like a revolution. It looked like a hedge fund. The headquarters was a monolith of glass and steel piercing the gray Seattle sky. It was ironic, Mike thought, that a group dedicated to proving the Earth was a flat plane would build a tower designed to look like a rocket ship. Mike and Wendy stood in the atrium. They looked out of place in their hiking clothes amidst the sea of tech bros in Patagonia vests and expensive sneakers. Dr. Parker, the voice boomed across the lobby. Julian Vane approached them, arms wide open. He was a man who had been manufactured for media. Perfect hair, capped teeth, and a gaze that was intense but entirely hollow. And this must be the faithful Wendy, Vane said, bowing slightly to her. Wendy didn't smile. She gripped her purse strap tighter. She had the gift of discernment, and right now, her internal alarms were ringing. You sent me an email, Mike said, skipping the pleasantries. You said you have data on the Antarctica ring. We have more than data, Mike. We have a fleet, Vane lowered his voice, guiding them toward a private elevator. We have drones, long-range, solar-powered. We've mapped the ice wall for 3,000 miles. No drop, no curve, just a barrier. They stepped into the elevator. Vane swiped a key card. We want you to be the face of the disclosure, Vane said, turning to Mike. The world won't listen to us. We're corporate. But you? You're the martyr, the physicist who lost everything for the truth. They'll listen to you. What's the catch? Mike asked. No catch, Vane smiled. We just want the truth out. We want to break the matrix. The elevator doors opened onto the top floor. It was a sprawling penthouse laboratory. Screens covered every wall. But it wasn't the screens that caught Mike's eye. It was the map on the central table. It was the Gleason's standard map, the flat Earth projection. but superimposed over it were strange symbols, ley lines, sigils. "What is this?" Mike asked, pointing to the map. "The energetic grid," Vane said casually. "See, Mike, the church got it wrong. The Earth is flat, yes, but it's not a courtroom created by a judge. It's a battery, and we are the energy source. Once we break the globe lie, we can unlock human divinity. We don't need a savior, we need to ascend." Wendy stepped forward, her voice shaking but clear. "That is the oldest lie in the book, Mr. Vane. Ye shall be as gods. You're just swapping the globe deception for the New Age deception." Vane's smile didn't waver, but his eyes went cold. "Theology is a distraction, Wendy. We deal in physics here." "So do I," a voice came from the shadows of the lab. Mike spun around. An old man in a janitor's uniform was emptying a trash can in the corner. He stood up, wiping his hands on a rag. He looked at Vane, then at Mike. "And the physics of this building," the janitor said, "is that it's built on sand." Vane looked annoyed. "Jenks, get out! I told you to clean the lab after hours." Jenks didn't move. He dropped the rag. He walked toward the table, his limp pronounced but his stride purposeful. He looked at the map with the sigils and scoffed. "You're trying to sell them the Gnostic heresy wrapped in flat earth paper, Julian," Jenks said. His voice was different now. The tremble of the old man was gone. It was the voice of an unexpected authority. Jenks looked at Mike. "I told you not to sign the contract, Dr. Parker." Mike's eyes widened. "You? You're the one who messaged me?" "Jenks is a senile custodian," Vane laughed, though he looked uneasy. "He used to work for the DOD back in the 80s before he cracked." "I didn't crack, Julian. I woke up," Jenks said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small metallic device. It looked like a flash drive, but older, military grade. "This," Jenks held it up, "contains the refractive algorithms for the firmament. Real physics, not this new age mumbo-jumbo Julian is peddling. The dome is real, it's physical. It has a refractive index of 1.0003, and on October 31st, they aren't going to ascend anyone. They are going to detonate a megaton-yield warhead against the firmament at the vanishing point." The room went silent. "Why?" Mike whispered. "To crack it," Jenks said softly. "Just enough to let the waters above leak through. They'll call it melting ice caps or alien terraforming. But the real goal is to create a visual spectacle so terrifying that the world begs for a savior. And Julian here," Jenks pointed a calloused finger at the CEO, "is going to be the one to tell the truth community that the aliens are actually our star brothers coming to save us from the dome." Vane stopped smiling. He pressed a button under the table. "Security to the lab." Jenks looked at Mike and Wendy. "Run." Chapter 3. The Exodus Protocol. The blast doors of the elevator began to close, but Jenks was faster than he looked. He jammed the handle of his mop bucket into the gap, the metal screeching. "Stairs!" Jenks commanded, shoving Mike toward the emergency exit. "Who are you, really?" Mike yelled as they burst into the stairwell, the alarms blaring above them. "I'm the guy who polished the glass," Jenks grunted, leading them down the concrete steps 2 at a time. "I was the lead engineer for Project Dominion in 1989. We mapped the enclosure. We found the edge. We found the height. And then they buried the data and buried me." They reached the parking garage. Vane's security team, paramilitary types in black armor, were already spilling out of the elevators. "My truck," Jenks pointed to a rusted 1990 Ford F-150 in the corner. "It has no GPS, no OnStar. It's invisible." They piled in. The engine roared to life with a cloud of black smoke. Jenks slammed it into reverse, smashing through the parking arm and peeling out onto the Seattle streets. Wendy was in the middle seat, clutching her Bible. "Where are we going?" Jenks checked the rearview mirror. "To the only place the satellites can't see us, the dead zone." "The dead zone?" Mike asked. "Idaho," Jenks said. "I have a bunker, and I have the equipment to stop them." "Stop them from what?" Mike asked. "Detonating the warhead?" "No," Jenks said grimly, merging onto the highway. "We can't stop the detonation. That's inevitable. The script is written. We have to stop the interpretation." Jenks looked at Mike, his eyes hard. "When the sky cracks and the lights appear, the whole world is going to believe it's an invasion. We have to hack the signal. We have to tell them it's not an invasion. It's a prison break. And the things coming through aren't Martians. They are the things King Solomon locked away." Mike looked out the window. The sun was setting, a local light moving away over the flat plain of the earth. "So it begins," Mike whispered. Chapter 4. The Sound of the Ceiling. Interstate 90, eastbound, the Cascade Mountains. The rusted Ford F-150 rattled as it climbed the pass, the engine straining against the incline. Outside, the world was pitch black, save for the occasional sweeping headlights of a semi-truck. Mike Parker stared at the dashboard. The speedometer needle wavered erratically. "The odometer is disconnected," Jenks muttered, gripping the wheel with white-knuckled intensity. "So is the GPS module. To the satellites, this truck doesn't exist. It's a ghost." Wendy sat between them, the hum of the tires filling the tense silence. She turned to the old man. "You said you worked on Project Dominion," she said softly. "I've studied the government archives. There is no record of a Project Dominion." Jenks let out a dry, bitter laugh. "Of course not. In the official books, it's listed as a failed weather balloon initiative under NOAA. But it wasn't NOAA. It was a joint operation. DoD, NASA, and the Vatican Observatory." Mike looked up. "The Vatican? They have the oldest telescopes, kid. They've known about the enclosure longer than anyone," Jenks said. He downshifted as the truck crested the mountain. "In 1958, during Operation Fishbowl, they tried to nuke the ceiling. They wanted to see if they could break out. They couldn't. The EMPs just bounced back and fried grids in Hawaii. So they changed tactics," Mike guessed. "Exactly," Jenks nodded. "If you can't break it, you map it. That was Dominion, 1989. We launched high-altitude rockets, not to go into orbit, because orbit is a myth. You can't orbit a stationary plane. We launched them to skim the surface of the dome, to measure the friction, the temperature, the refractive index." "And?" Mike pressed. Jenks's eyes looked distant, reflecting the passing road markers. "We found it. At 72 miles up near the equator, dipping to 60 miles near the ice wall. It's not gas. It's not a magnetic field. It's solid, Mike. It feels like crystallized oxygen, or glass made of diamond. And when the rockets hit it," Jenks tapped the steering wheel rhythmically. Thump, thump. It didn't sound like hitting metal. It sounded like hitting water, a massive, resonant thud that rang like a bell. We recorded the acoustic signature. It was beautiful and terrifying, because it proves there is a builder," Wendy whispered. "That's why they buried it," Jenks confirmed. "The data showed that the universe isn't infinite. It's finite. It's a terrarium. And if people knew they were in a terrarium..." Chapter 5. The Dead Zone. Northern Idaho 0300 hours. They turned off the highway onto a dirt logging road that wound deep into the forest. The trees here were ancient towering pines that blocked out the sky. After 5 miles of bone-jarring bumps, Jenks killed the headlights. He drove the last mile in darkness using night vision goggles he pulled from the glove box. "Why the dark?" Mike asked. "Drone patrols," Jenks said. "They scan for heat signatures and light. but the canopy here is thick enough to mask the engine block if we keep moving. They arrived at what looked like a collapsed mine entrance. Jenks got out, limped to a rotting wooden post, and punched a code into a keypad hidden behind a piece of bark. The ground groaned. The collapsed rocks slid aside on hydraulic rails, revealing a concrete ramp. "Welcome to the bunker," Jenks said. "I built this place in the 90s, back when I thought Y2K was going to be the end. Turns out, I was 20 years too early." They drove inside, the heavy door sealed behind them with the hiss of pressurized air. The interior was a time capsule, walls lined with ham radios, reel-to-reel tape decks, and physical maps pinned to corkboards. There were no smart screens, no Wi-Fi routers. It was an analog fortress. Jenks led them to a large table covered in schematics. He turned on a single overhead lamp. "This," Jenks pointed to a blueprint, "is the device they are going to use on October 31st. The HARP array in Alaska is just the primer. The trigger is a satellite, or what they call a satellite. It's actually a high-altitude dirigible hovering at 120,000 feet." Mike leaned in, his physicist brain activating. "It's a lensing array." "Correct," Jenks said. "They are going to fire a high-energy plasma beam upward from the ground, bounce it off the dirigible, and focus it onto a single point on the firmament. The dome is strong, but it has a resonant frequency. If they hit that frequency, it shatters." "Shatters?" Wendy asked, horrified. "Like a window?" "No," Jenks said. "It heals. It's self-repairing. But for about 15 minutes there will be a hole, a rift." Jenks looked at Wendy. "You know your Bible. What is above the firmament?" "The waters," Wendy said instantly. "Genesis 1:7, and God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament." "Waters," Jenks repeated. "Deep waters, the abyss. And things swim in those waters, Wendy. Things that have been waiting to get back in since the days of Noah." Chapter 6. The Script. Mike paced the concrete floor. "So the alien invasion isn't just a hologram. It's a cover for a physical breach." "It's a mix," Jenks explained, pulling a file folder from a cabinet. It was stamped "Eyes Only, Project Bluebeam." "They will project holograms of ships to control the narrative," Jenks said. "They want the world to think it's a technological invasion, little gray men in saucers. Because if people think it's tech, they will trust the government to fight it with tech. They will accept the one-world military. They will accept the mark, the chip, whatever security measure is offered." Jenks slammed the folder on the table. "But if people saw what was actually coming through that hole, if they saw the multi-dimensional, serpentine entities that live in the void, they wouldn't call the president. They'd call on Jesus." Wendy shivered. "Revelation 9, she quoted, and he opened the bottomless pit, and there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth." "Exactly," Jenks said. "The aliens are the locusts. The cover-up is scientism. They have trained the world for 60 years to believe in evolution and space travel, so that when the demons arrive, we call them ET instead of unclean spirits." Mike looked at the blueprint again. "We have to stop the beam." "We can't," Jenks said. "The facility is automated. It's guarded by the Space Force. We can't get near the weapon." "Then what do we do?" Mike asked. "Just watch?" "No." Jenks walked over to a dusty console in the corner. It looked like a radio station mixing board. "We hijacked the explanation." He flipped a switch, and the vacuum tubes hummed to life, glowing with a warm orange light. "The Zenith Collective and the media are going to broadcast the arrival on every frequency. TV, radio, internet. They have a pre-recorded message from the world leader welcoming our Star Brothers." Jenks looked at Mike. "But the system has a vulnerability." The emergency override. It was built into the infrastructure in the 80s as a backdoor for the continuity of government. I wrote the code for the audio handshake. "You can take over the broadcast?" Mike asked. "For about 3 minutes," Jenks said, "before they triangulate us and send a missile down the chimney." 3 minutes, Wendy said softly. "That's enough to read the warning." "It's enough to sow doubt," Jenks said. "If we can tell people, before the sky opens, exactly what is going to happen, if we can predict the deception, then when it happens, maybe, just maybe, the remnant will recognize it." Chapter 7. The Light of Knowledge. Later that night, Mike couldn't sleep. He found Jenks sitting in the corner of the bunker, nursing a cup of black coffee, staring at a black and white photo of a woman and a child. "Your family?" Mike asked. "They think I died in '98, Jenks said, his voice rough. "Car accident. It was the only way to keep them safe. If I had stayed, the agency would have used them as leverage to keep me quiet about the dome." Mike sat on a crate opposite him. "You gave up everything." "I gave up a lie," Jenks said. He looked at Mike. "You were a physicist, Mike. You know the feeling. The moment you realized the math didn't work, the moment you realized gravity was just a magic word for density and buoyancy. It hurts, doesn't it? Losing the world." "It felt like the ground fell out from under me," Mike admitted. "Or rather, like the spinning stopped." "It's an addiction," Jenks gestured to the maps. "The globe model. It makes people feel special because they think they understand the universe. They think they are conquerors of space. But here," Jenks tapped the table, "here we are just children in a crib, safe, enclosed, watched. It's humbling, and the ego of man hates humility." Jenks stood up, wincing as his bad knee popped. "Get some sleep, Parker. Tomorrow we start calibrating the transmitter. We need to boost the signal to hit the the upper atmospheric layer, and bounce it down to the East Coast." "Why the East Coast?" Mike asked. "Because that's where the deception starts," Jenks said grimly. "Washington, D.C., the seat of this particular beast. That's where the first ship is going to land." Jenks turned off the lamp, plunging the bunker into darkness. "And that's where we have to send the truth." Chapter 8. The Predictive Program. The bunker, Northern Idaho, October 29th, 2 days before the event. The air in the bunker was thick with the smell of ozone and stale coffee. For 3 weeks, Mike and Jenks had been working in shifts, rewiring the massive transmitter that dominated the back wall. Mike sat at the console, watching a bank of monitors that were tapping into world news feeds. "It's everywhere," Mike said, his voice hollow. "Look at the headlines." He pointed to the screens. BBC. "Unexplained signal detected from Proxima Centauri." CNN. "Global Defense Summit called to address extraplanetary threats." Fox News. "Vatican astronomer says, we would baptize an alien." "Predictive programming," Jenks grunted from under the console, where he was soldering a connection. "They have to tell you what they are going to do before they do it. It's part of the ritual. It's how they manufacture consent." Wendy was sitting on a cot nearby, reading from a worn notebook. "It's not just the news, Mike. It's the feeling. Can you feel it? The heaviness?" Mike nodded slowly. He could feel it. A subtle vibration in the air, like a low-frequency hum that set his teeth on edge. "That's the ELF waves," Jenks said, sliding out from under the desk. He wiped grease on his coveralls. "Extremely low frequency. They turned on the HARP heaters yesterday. They are bouncing 4 Hz waves off the ionosphere. It induces anxiety, docility, and hypersuggestibility in the human brain. They are tenderizing the meat before the meal." Jenks limped over to the main map. He drew a red circle around Washington, D.C., London, and Jerusalem. The script calls for 3 simultaneous landings, Jenks explained. Jerusalem to capture the religious, London to capture the financial, DC to capture the military. Once those 3 fall, the rest of the nations will hand over sovereignty within 24 hours. And we have 1 shot, Mike said, looking at the microphone. 1 shot, Jenks agreed. We have to hit the frequency exactly when the holograms appear. If we broadcast too early, they triangulate us and shut us down. If we broadcast too late, the trance will already be set. Chapter 9. The Judas Goat. Washington, D.C. Simultaneous time. Arthur Sterling adjusted his tie in the mirror of the green room. He looked tired. Being the handler for the end of the world was exhausting work. "You're on in 5, Mr. Sterling," a production assistant chirped. Sterling walked onto the brightly lit set. Across from him sat the nation's most popular news anchor, a man who had sold more wars and pandemics than Sterling could count. "Welcome back," the anchor said, facing the camera. "We are joined by Arthur Sterling, director of the Horizon Initiative and liaison to the newly formed Global Space Defense Coalition. Arthur, the rumors are flying. What can you tell us about the atmospheric anomalies reported over the Pacific?" Sterling put on his practiced face, concern mixed with resolve. "Jim, we are monitoring the situation closely. What I can say is that the scientific consensus has shifted. For years, we thought we were alone in the cosmos. But the data from the Webb telescope, and now these atmospheric readings, they suggest we are on the verge of contact." "Contact," the anchor repeated, emphasizing the word. "Are we talking biological entities?" "We are talking about highly advanced intelligences," Sterling said carefully. "Beings that may have been watching us for a long time, perhaps guiding our evolution. We shouldn't be afraid, Jim. We should be humble. If they are coming here, crossing the vastness of space, they are likely here to help us, to save us from ourselves." In the bunker in Idaho, watching the feed, Wendy stood up and pointed at the screen. "Liar!" she shouted. "They aren't crossing space! They are crossing dimensions!" Mike watched Sterling's eyes on the screen. He saw the deception. He's positioning them as saviors, guiding our evolution. He's setting up the panspermia narrative. If aliens seeded life on Earth, then God is dead. That's the end game. And if God is dead, Jenks added darkly, then there is no judgment. And if there is no judgment, do what thou wilt. Chapter 10. The Watchers. October 31st, 1800 hours, 6 p.m. The sun had set over the mountains, but the sky wasn't dark. It was a bruised purple, glowing with artificial luminescence. The chemical trails sprayed for weeks were now reacting with the HARP frequencies, turning the sky into a massive projection screen. "It's starting," Jenks said. He flipped the main breaker. The bunker's lights dimmed as the generator diverted power to the transmitter. "Power output at 90%, Mike called out, his hands shaking slightly as he adjusted the dials. Frequency set to 89.5 FM, overriding the emergency band. "Wait for the visual," Jenks commanded. "Don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes." Wendy was pacing, praying aloud. "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world." Suddenly, the ground shook. Not an earthquake, an impact. "They detonated," Jenks whispered, looking at the seismic monitor. "High altitude burst over the Atlantic. They just cracked the firmament." On the monitors, the live feeds from New York and London cut to static, then returned. The crowds in Times Square were looking up, screaming. The sky above New York ripped open. It didn't look like a cloud parting. It looked like a fabric tearing. Through the rift, a blinding white light poured in, the light of the heavens, distorted by the fallen world. And then, the holograms engaged. Massive silver saucer shapes materialized around the rift, masking the true nature of the breach. They hummed with a sound that vibrated the cameras. "Now!" Jenks yelled. "Hit it, Mike!" Mike slammed his hand onto the transmit button. "System error. Antenna mismatch." "What?" Mike frantically typed commands. "The external array isn't responding. The ice on the mechanism. It's jammed the directional motor." "It needs to point east," Jenks shouted. "If it's stuck facing north, the signal will bounce off the mountain and die." "I'll go," Mike said, grabbing his coat. "No," Jenks stopped him. He grabbed a heavy wrench from the table. "You're the voice, Parker. You're the scientist. They need to hear you explain the physics of the lie. If an old man yells at them, they'll laugh. If a physicist tells them the sky is solid, they might listen." "Jenks, your leg," Wendy started. "My leg is fine for a one-way trip," Jenks smiled sadly. He looked at Wendy. "Keep him on the narrow path, sister." He looked at Mike. "When the light turns green, you speak. You speak until they cut the cord." Jenks turned and limped toward the airlock. Chapter 11. The Sacrifice. Outside, the wind was howling. The purple sky churned like a bruised ocean. Jenks dragged himself up the ladder to the roof of the hidden bunker. The cold bit through his coveralls. He could see the antenna array, a massive grid of metal, frozen in place by a sheet of ice from the night before. He reached the base of the motor. He slammed the wrench against the ice. Clang. Nothing. He hit it again. Clang. Inside the bunker, Mike watched the signal strength indicator. Red. 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 "Come on, Jenks," Mike whispered. On the screens, the alien ships were descending over the United Nations building. A voice was booming from the sky, audio modulation technology, speaking in every language at once. "Citizens of Earth, do not be afraid. We are the architects." On the roof, Jenks saw the drone. It was a black quadcopter, silent and lethal, hovering just above the tree line. It had spotted his heat signature. Jenks knew he had seconds. He jammed the wrench into the gears of the motor and threw his entire body weight against it. "For the truth!" he screamed. The ice shattered. The gears groaned, then slipped free. The antenna swung violently toward the east, locking into position. A green light flashed on the console inside. "Signal locked!" Mike yelled. On the roof, Jenks looked up at the drone. He saw the muzzle flash of the mounted weapon. He didn't feel the pain. He just felt the cold, and then peace. Chapter 12. The Broadcast. Inside, Mike didn't know Jenks was gone. He only knew the light was green. He leaned into the microphone. His voice trembled, then hardened into steel. "This is an emergency broadcast to the people of North America. Do not believe your eyes." The signal blasted out at 50,000 watts. It hit the ionosphere and rained down over the eastern seaboard. Car radios changed channels. Smart speakers glitched and played the audio. Emergency sirens in DC paused and broadcast his voice. "My name is Mike Parker. I was a physicist for the Horizon Initiative. What you are seeing in the sky is not an invasion. It is a deception. There is no space. There are no planets. We live on a stationary plane enclosed by a solid firmament. The government has detonated a weapon to breach the enclosure. The entities you see are not extraterrestrial. They are interdimensional. They are the fallen ones described in the Bible. Do not go to the safe zones. Do not take the inoculation. Do not worship the image of the beast. Read Matthew 24. Read 2 Thessalonians. The great delusion is here. The sky is a roof, and the owner of the house is coming to judge the tenants." Mike kept talking. He explained the density. He explained the lack of curvature. He explained the 1844 timeline. For 3 minutes, the narrative broke. In living rooms across America, people looked from their TVs to their Bibles. The spell of the ELF waves flickered. Then, the bunker door blew open. Chapter 13. The Strong Delusion. The Bunker, Northern Idaho. October 31st, 1805 hours. The blast doors didn't just open, they disintegrated. Mike was thrown backward by the concussion wave, his ears ringing. Through the smoke, beams of red laser light cut through the dust. Armored figures poured into the room, moving with unnatural speed. "Secure the transmitter!" a voice barked. Mike scrambled toward Wendy, shielding her with his body as a boot slammed into his ribs, pinning him to the concrete. He gasped for air, looking up into the faceless visor of a Zenith mercenary. "Don't shoot them," a calm voice commanded from the doorway. "We need them for the retraction." Arthur Sterling stepped over the debris. He was wearing a heavy trench coat and holding a tablet. He looked at the smoking transmitter console, then at Mike. "That was a valiant effort, Dr. Parker," Sterling said, tapping his screen. "You managed to interrupt the Global Unity broadcast for exactly 3 minutes and 12 seconds. Impressive." "People heard me," Mike wheezed, blood trickling from his lip. "They heard the truth. They heard a frantic man shouting about glass domes and Bible verses while spaceships descended over their cities," Sterling corrected coldly. "Do you know what the reaction is, Mike? We're tracking the sentiment analysis in real time." Sterling turned the tablet around. It showed social media feeds scrolling at light speed. #cyberattack, #religious terrorist, #ignore the hacker, #welcome architects. "They don't believe you," Sterling said. "They are relieved. They were terrified of the invasion, and then the architects landed and offered peace. You're just a glitch in the show." "Where is Jenks?" Wendy asked, her voice trembling. Sterling's expression didn't change. "The technician on the roof? He was neutralized by a defensive drone. He is gone." Mike felt a cold knot in his stomach. Jenks was dead. "Bag them," Sterling ordered the guards. "Take them to the processing center. The New World doesn't have prisons. It has re-education camps." Chapter 14. The Age of Aquarius, DC. Processing Center, formerly FEMA Camp 4, 2 weeks later. The world had changed in 14 days. Mike and Wendy sat in a holding cell with glass walls. Outside, they could see the lobby of the facility. It didn't look like a jail. It looked like a clinic. People were lining up voluntarily. Television screens on the walls played a constant loop of the architects, tall, luminous beings, CGI overlaid on biological entities, standing next to world leaders. The narrative had shifted exactly as Jenks had predicted. The aliens claimed they were the ancient cedars of humanity. They claimed the firmament was real, but they spun it as a quarantine field placed around Earth by a jealous demiurge, God, to keep humanity from ascending. The aliens claimed they had broken the glass to free humanity. "It's the Gnostic inversion," Wendy whispered, staring at the screen. "They are calling good evil and evil good. They are saying the Creator is the jailer and the serpent is the liberator." "And the people love it," Mike said, watching the line outside. "Look at them. They're getting the mark." People were rolling up their sleeves to receive a transdermal patch, a Unity interface that promised health, connection to the global grid, and access to the new universal currency. The door to their cell hissed open. Julian Vane walked in. He looked different. His eyes were dilated, and he moved with a strange, fluid grace. He was no longer just a CEO. He was a host. "Mike, Wendy," Vane smiled. "I'm here to offer you amnesty." "We don't want your amnesty," Mike said. "We want the truth." "The truth is what we agree it is," Vane said softly. "The curvature is gone, Mike. We admitted it. The schools are already rewriting the textbooks. We are teaching the enclosed world model now. But we are teaching that we broke out of it." Vane leaned in. "Admit that the architects are our benefactors. Sign the statement that your broadcast was a psychotic break caused by isolation stress. Do that, and you can live in the new society. You can have your lab back. And if we don't? Wendy asked. Then you are non-essential, Vane shrugged. We won't kill you. That creates martyrs. We will just turn off your chip. You won't be able to buy food. You won't be able to travel. You will be invisible. We never had a chip, Mike said. Then you are already dead, Vane said. He signaled to the guards. Release them outside the perimeter. Let them starve in the old world. The wild dogs can have them. Chapter 15. The Wilderness. The outskirts of Shenandoah. November 15th. They were dumped on a roadside 20 miles from the city limits. The guards threw their jackets after them and drove off in a silent electric transport. It was snowing. The sky was a dull, flat gray. The hole where the weapon had struck was still visible, a swirling vortex of unnatural clouds that never moved, like a scar on the ceiling of the world. Mike and Wendy walked in silence for hours. They were cold, hungry, and defeated. We failed, Mike said, his voice cracking. Jenks died for nothing. We broadcast the warning, and the world just scrolled past it. Wendy stopped. She grabbed Mike's arm and pointed toward a dense patch of woods. Did we? She asked. In the distance, through the trees, they saw a flickering light. Not the harsh LED glow of the cities, but the warm, dancing light of a fire. They moved closer, cautious. In a clearing, there was a group of about 30 people. They were huddled around a campfire. There were tents, old trucks, and supplies. A man on the perimeter spotted them. He raised a shotgun, then lowered it slowly as he recognized Mike's face. "It's him!" the man shouted. "It's the voice from the radio!" The group rushed forward. They weren't soldiers, they were families. Mechanics, farmers, nurses. An older woman grabbed Mike's hand, weeping. "We heard you," she said. "We were watching the landing and we were terrified. We were about to go to the shelters and then the radio changed. You read Matthew 24. You told us about the firmament." "We didn't go to the shelters," a young father said, holding his daughter. "We grabbed our Bibles and we ran. We realized it was the Great Deception." Mike looked around the circle. There were only 30 of them, a tiny drop in the ocean of billions who had fallen for the lie. "We thought we were the only ones," Mike whispered. "There are others," the man with the shotgun said. "We've picked up shortwave chatter, pockets of resistance, people who know the earth is flat and the king is coming. The remnant." Chapter 16. The Little Season. Late that night, Mike sat by the fire. The heat warmed his frozen hands. Wendy sat beside him, looking up at the scarred sky. "Jenks didn't fail," Mike said softly. "He didn't wake the world. The world was never going to wake up. It loves the dark too much." "He woke the sleeper," Wendy said. "He saved these families." Mike looked at the fire. The science was settled. The debate was over. The world knew the earth was flat now, but they had twisted the discovery into a rebellion against God. The true battle, the spiritual battle, was just beginning. He reached into his pocket. He still had the small, battered New Testament Jenks had given him back in the bunker. Mike stood up. The group looked at him, waiting. They didn't need a physicist anymore. They needed a shepherd. "We can't stay here," Mike said, his voice strong again. "The density of the air is changing. The winter will be hard. But we know the terrain. We know the truth of the creation." He looked toward the dark horizon, where the glow of the beast's city stained the night. "They have the technology. They have the media. They have the aliens. But they are trapped in here with us," Mike said. "And the owner of the house is on his way." Wendy smiled for the first time in weeks. "Even so, come, Lord Jesus." Mike kicked dirt over the fire, extinguishing the light to hide them from the drones above. "Let's move," Mike said. They walked into the darkness, not as victims, but as the resistance. The end.
For more Bible-based end-time prophecy dramas to strengthen your faith and the faith of others, help spread the word by supporting the channel. Please like, subscribe, and share.